That's kind of a funny word we don't hear very often. Firelock, what is that? Well, what we would refer to as a gun, they're referring to in the 18th century as a firearm. Okay, a firearm. The reason it's called a firelock is because of the lock mechanism here. This is what actually makes the gun go boom. All of the moving parts, all the mechanical bits are right in here. In order to pop this lock off, this is essentially just a metal tube attached to some really pretty wood. Now, the reason it's called a lock is that if I were to take off this lock and show you the rear end of it, it looks very similar mechanically to a door lock 250 years ago. So similar, in fact, that oftentimes locksmiths can advertise in the paper, if the lock breaks on your gun, I might be able to fix it. Now, why is this a firelock demonstration and not a musket demonstration? Well, that's because, and this might be a little surprising, I'm not holding a musket, all right? And if you're a little bit confused and scratching your head, you're not wrong in thinking that, because we use the term musket very generally, right, in our modern parlance, our modern speak, to kind of mean any black powder or long arm that kind of looks like this. But 250 years ago, musket has a very specific definition. Musket means military. A military-style firearm for combat use that is smooth-bore, not rifled, so muskets are muskets, rifles are rifles. Not interchangeable terms in these days. And finally, you can accept a bayonet on the end of it, turning into a 6-foot and change fighting spear. Really, according to most military generals, strategists, thinkers, a musket is not a gun. It is a spear that has the added benefit of being able to shoot. They are spears first and guns second. Just during the Revolutionary War, I can describe to you at least 4 separate actions where a part of an entire battle or an entire engagement was fought at the point of a bayonet, no guns loaded. Right? So the bayonets are what's winning these battles, or a general advance with infantry with bayonets, to be more specific. Now, if I'm not holding a musket, what am I holding? Well, this is the most numerous and common type of firearm that is in civilian hands when the war breaks out. This is called a fowling piece. That is F-O-W-L, like waterfowl, duck, goose, that kind of thing. They also call these birding guns. This is the colonial version of the 20-gauge shotgun. This particular piece is 62 caliber. It is quite literally a 20-gauge, right? This style of firearm is the most numerous because it is the cheapest option for a civilian to have. We have to understand 90% of the colonial population are farming. Farmers in these days don't make that much money. This would cost a farmer about a month of his wages, whereas a musket or a rifle might cost anywhere between 6 to 12 months of your wages. You are not going to waste a year of your income on a car, right? We kind of mythologize the American long rifle when it comes to this war. You know, people with very surface level knowledge will even blame the rifle on we win the war. You know, every American's a rifleman kind of a thing. But rifles are prohibitively expensive to most of the population. Who can afford a Ferrari or a Porsche right now? Anybody? I was going to ask for a loan if you did. But it's almost that much of a cost bearer, right? You wouldn't be able to afford a Maserati right now. Well, guess what? You wouldn't be able to afford a nice fancy rifle 250 years ago either. All right? Cost is absolutely going to be a factor, especially in days where there is government-mandated firearm ownership. Every colony has various militia laws. Here in Virginia in 1775, the militia is every freeborn white Protestant male between 18 and 60. So let's say you're a 40-year-old man, your son's going to turn 18 in a couple months. Well, you're going to have to scrounge up the cash to buy another firearm. Legally, obligated to do so. Now, are you going to buy him a Ferrari or are you going to buy him a Honda Civic? Right? Same kind of conversation to be had here. And this fowling piece, right, is fine for almost everything a farmer needs, right? You got to put food on the table, right? You got to bag a squirrel and put it in the pot in the cage. You know what they call squirrels? Chicken of the tree. There's varmints eating at the 24-hour buffet that are your crops that need to be taken care of as well, okay? But this is not ideal when you actually have to fight a war the modern continental European way, like the British are fighting, for one big reason. Anybody want to know what that is? No, it doesn't have a bayonet. As I went over, bayonets are what's winning these battles. If you do not have one, you are already starting the battle on the back foot. your breeches around your ankles, right? We're going to try, what becomes the Continental Army and all the various militias are going to try and get military-style muskets any way they can, stealing them, raiding for them, taking them off of British dead, captured, wounded. Maybe there's a supply ship and a convoy coming over from England, right? Maybe swipe that up filled with military guns. But what we can't, in the early part of the war, what we can't get of military hardware, we have to supplement with civilian hardware, and more often than not, it's one of these, okay? By the end of the war, right, we have to get muskets from our eventual allies, the French, the Spanish, the Dutch, especially the French. We would not be a country today without France. That's just a basic historical fact. No asterisk, no parentheses, no caveats. We would not be a country without France. By the end of the war, they're giving us close to 150,000 of their Charleville pattern muskets, so they do get around that problem. Once the war ends, we don't need to be fighting a war of liberation anymore. Guess what? People are going back to these, because again, this is the cheap option. This style of firearm is very, very popular. But you're here to watch a gun go bang. You're not here to see me pontificate about the differences between these guns. I see the frustration. I'll get to shoot. Now I'm going to do this slowly, kind of by the numbers, and then I'm going to do it quickly. So even though this is a civilian gun, I am under military discipline, hence the fancy uniform I'm wearing. So I'm going to load this the military way according to the manual, quite literally. I'm waiting for the command to load, that is to prime and load. And I hear that first thing I need to do is to make the gun safe. It's in its easiest position as though it's just been fired. I'm going to pull this back to here. Click. I am now half cocked right now. The safety is engaged. I can pull this trigger. Anybody ever heard that old-timey saying, don't go off half cocked? This is where it comes from. If there is something wonky, screwy in this lock mechanism here, I'm going off half cocked. So once it's safe, I can then reach into my cartridge box and grab a cartridge. Everything to fire this gun one time sits right in here. It's basically a paper tube filled with gunpowder and a bullet sits at the bottom of it. Everything's self-contained. So made it of paper, I will rip it open with my teeth, exposing that powder. Now that command is to prime and load. First bit is prime. It takes a powder, stick it here into my pan. This whole flintlock mechanism works off of sparks, flint striking steel like you start a campfire. I have a literal piece of flint stone right here. Scrapes along the hammer, shower sparks into that pan, creates a little flash in the pan, the flame from which will travel through a small drilled vent hole right here to the main charge. So it's not like a modern firearm where it's an instantaneous bang when you pull the trigger. There's always going to be at least a fraction of a second delay, maybe as low as a 20th of a second delay between the actual gun goes off. But once that powder's in there, I can shut my hammer. It's everything contained, it's not going anywhere. There's some spring tension here keeping it shut, allowing me to cast the piece about. Now I'll take the rest of my cartridge and dump it straight down the muzzle, hence why this is a muzzle-loading firearm. Now, if there was a bullet, don't worry, we're shooting blanks today. It'll be right here at the end, where I'm pinching my fingers, okay? The paper goes down, it acts as what we call a wad, because again, this is a smoothbore, not a rifle. I'd probably be shooting anywhere between a 58 to 60 caliber ball out of this 62 caliber barrel, all right? So there's something that's got to keep it down by the breech. Once I take out my ramrod and pack it down, but this is going to be a really quick process because it's pretty much helping gravity do most of the hard work. It's not like the movies where they're ramming for 15 minutes at a time. Oh my goodness, the British are coming, we gotta load quick. That's a rifle. That's an inherent limitation of a rifle in these days, and why, ironically enough, they're not that useful for warfare in this period. But once everything's packed down by the breech where it needs to be, I can return my ramrod, bring the piece back up to my left shoulder as a visual cue to my commanding officer that I am done loading, I am ready to fire. Once everybody in my unit looks like me, or I'd imagine my guys in those nice tightly packed ranks to my left, right, and rear, my commanding officer will give the command to make ready. Remember, the gun is safe right now. If I want to kill somebody with it, I need to make it unsafe. I need to, as the name would imply, make it ready. So, bringing this right back here, I'm going to pull this back, you'll hear another click. I am now full cock. Freeze that. And if you don't like loud noises, folks, that'll be the time to cover those ears. Ha! That was pretty slow, right? Yeah. Going through that process, step by step, explaining what I'm doing along the way. A well-trained soldier in this period is expected to be able to do everything I just showed you in about 15 to 20 seconds. That is 3 to 4 rounds a minute, boys and girls. That is what they are training you up to achieve. This is a rate of fire over accuracy game here, right? They are not training you to be a super accurate marksman. That's sometimes a secondary, possibly even tertiary consideration. They want you to go through these motions hours at a time, day after day, so you can do it without thinking about it. So it becomes what we call muscle memory. We train soldiers in the modern day very similar. Now, lucky for you, this is my day job. I can actually do 15 to 20 seconds. Who wants to see what that looks like?
Me.
Yeah. Now, if you're going to count along with me and try and test me, that's well and good. But you better remember your Mississippis and don't start counting until I say prime and load. I get very vain about this. Now, let's make it happen though. Prime and load!
Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi, 6 Mississippi, 7 Mississippi, 8 Mississippi, 9 Mississippi, 10 Mississippi, 11 Mississippi, 12 Mississippi, 13 Mississippi, 14 Mississippi, 15 Mississippi.
All right, 15 seconds right there. Don't be too impressed though. I'm going to stop patting myself on the back. I do have a pretty severe handicap. Anybody know what that is? Nobody's shooting back at me, you know. The mileage may vary. Without further ado, folks, let's make it happen. Ready? Freeze it. Yeah. Woo! So that is a firelock, everybody. If you have any questions or you want to take a picture of my ugly mug, I'm going right in the guardhouse right here. You got to take your